Many people want to keep their personal and financial affairs private, but complete anonymity is basically impossible at this point, especially when it comes to estate planning, real estate ownership, and tax records. Now, here in Harris County, Texas, there are a few extra steps we can take beyond what is normally available throughout the rest of Texas. We're going to talk about it. But even with these extra steps, it's still important to understand the limits of your privacy planning. Hi, I'm John Strohmeyer with Strohmeyer Law, where we help our clients leave no unfinished business. While I am a lawyer, I am not your lawyer, so don't take the advice of some talking head on the internet as specific advice for you. Remember, you'll need to talk to your own advisor about your specific circumstances. Now, today we're going to be talking about protecting your privacy, focused on Harris County, where we are here in Houston. Now, when we think about our four horsemen of the estate planning apocalypse, fights, costs, loss of assets, and delays, this falls under loss of assets. Because if your information is too easy to find, you may become a target for fraud, harassment, and maybe even lawsuits. Of course, if you wanted to slot it under delays or frustration, I wouldn't be so mad about that. So at the start, why do people care about privacy? Mostly, they're preventing unwanted attention. Now, you don't have to be a high net worth individual, a public figure, actor, somebody famous, a professional, whoever it is. You may not want your home address or financial details to be easily accessible. Beyond that, you may want to stop solicitation and other scams. Fortunately, if you're already on some of these lists, public records can still be used and people can still find you. I mean, I've been getting texts and calls for years about a piece of property outside of San Antonio I've never been involved with, but for whatever reason, they think I'm willing to sell. What are you going to do about it? So potentially you can limit what people are going to reach out to you and bother you with, because if these scammers, marketers, and aggressive litigants think you are connected to it, they may harass you about it. And that gets us to the next one, protecting your personal safety. You may be concerned about stalking, harassment, or other threats. And so by shielding your home address and financial holdings, it just puts you in a better place to be protected from these. This has come up in terms of victims of domestic abuse who are looking to make sure that their abuser can't find them anymore, looking to put as much distance between their old lives and their new lives as possible. They want to make sure that that person can't find them ever again. But some of the things they want to do just don't align with the most extreme securities aspects. So they may want to own a house, not just rent it. How can we do that? We'll talk about that in a bit. Finally, just keeping things private. We may not want family members or other business associates even knowing details of what's in our plan, being able to find out who we are, where we live, or what we own. So, what are some of those risks? Well, we all know that your name is going to appear on legal documents, not just your will, which will be filed as a public document after you pass, but it could be a trust agreement, a deed for real estate, or your name on a business filing where somebody can go to the Texas taxable entity search and start looking up entity names and figure things out. It's possible that your name could be out there somewhere in the process. What else? Lenders do require identification. If you're financing a property, banks are going to require information about you, and your name will be tied to that mortgage. There's really no way around it, other than having the cash to buy the property outright. This means that you're going to be giving information to that bank so they know who you are and who to go after if you don't pay. They've got this right, and the only way really around it is making sure that they have been paid one way or another. You can ask them to keep your names off. We've been working recently with a family that was concerned about this. It was a lot of back and forth with the bank to make sure that things were kept off, and at the end of it, it gets us to our last thing. Public filings can't always be controlled. It doesn't matter what we say or how much we want it to be private. It's possible that somebody's at the bank or somewhere else may just make a mistake and include a document that includes your names. So real estate records, probate filings, other business registrations are going to have some public aspect, and the public has a right to see a lot of documents. So understand that even though we can do our best, no method's going to be perfect, and it's not going to prevent an accidental recording of something. So, what can you do? Where should you be thinking about protecting your information? Well, Texas has county appraisal districts in every county. These are valuing the real estate for annual ad valorem or property tax values. State law provides that you can remove your name from property records. Now, the problem is you're going to have to qualify generally as law enforcement, judge, or victims of domestic violence to have that information redacted. What are your alternatives? Harris County actually lets folks file a voluntary form uh, to have it listed as current owner instead of having the name out there. This limits what people can do in terms of online searches. It doesn't stop people from going into the Harris County Appraisal District website and doing a paper search, but it will stop people from being able to do a quick search online. This usually covers a lot of those requests and stops people from looking things up. Again, the law enforcement and judges, they're going to get an extra layer of protection that's coming from state law. Next, the Harris County Tax Assessor allows you to do the same sorts of things. Again, we've got the judges and other at-risk professionals who can get a stronger level of protection, but there's also a form that will allow people to have their tax records not be public information. The key, though, is making sure that you know how you're going to pay your property taxes every year. Because if you're used to going online, paying online by searching your last name, this will not be something you can do anymore. You're going to have to look it up by the account number every year when you make that payment. Now, if you're making escrow payments, the mortgage company should be taking care of that for you. Finally, voter registration. Again, certain professionals can have this protected, but also voter registration here in Harris County can have that removed from online searches. Other things you could think about would be using trusts or other entities to protect your address. So, as we think about this, beyond the options that are provided by each of those governmental entities, is there anything else we can do? Yes, there are a few things we can do to get some additional privacy. First, using a revocable management trust instead of a will as your testamentary vehicle can limit what people find out about you. As part of the probate process, your family, your executor, the administrator of the estate will be required to file a public inventory of the assets and their approximate values owned at your death. Now, this will only cover probate property. It's not going to cover assets that pass by beneficiary designation, such as life insurance, 401k, or an IRA. But brokerage accounts, bank accounts, real estate, those assets that are titled in your name that don't say when you pass away, it goes here. If it's going through the probate process, well, that'll be listed on the inventory. The alternative, as I mentioned, is a revocable management trust. By having that revocable management trust, the assets are no longer probate assets and they follow what the trust agreement says to do. And when it follows that, well, as a non probate asset, you don't list it on the probate inventory. Next, you could consider holding property in an LLC, limited liability company. So instead of owning the real estate in your own name, you could transfer it into an LLC name. This will give you a degree of separation because then instead of it being John Q. Smith on the property records, well, it could be random name LLC out there. Of course, somebody could then go to the Texas Taxable Entity Search and look up random name LLC to see who that is. And they can start figuring out what information has been reported about it. Of course, this is one more step, and not everybody's necessarily going to do it, but it is worth knowing like that is an option. Now, if we're talking about your homestead, you're probably not going to want to put that in an LLC. Why? You're not going to get your homestead exemption for property tax values. Sure, you can put it in there, but most people are interested in keeping their homestead exemption. Finally, you may want to consider using a P.O. box to have mail delivered somewhere other than your house. It's just one less place for people to find you. Now, certain things can't be listed as a P.O. box. So you can't list on your driver's license where or a P.O. box is where you live. You do have to put where you actually live, and so you're receiving things there. But if you're having certain other things like vehicle registrations sent to you, you could have that sent to a P.O. box and not necessarily to your home address, reducing the amount of mail that comes to you. Now, pulling it all together, The reality is there is no privacy option that is going to be perfect. Some documents will still be filed publicly, and government agencies are always going to have access to your real information. You can't put in a trailer park that you don't live in as the address on your driver's license. If you don't live there, you shouldn't be listing it on the driver's license. When we think about doing this work, remember that your privacy is coming at a cost. Many of these protective measures are going to require trade offs from you. So you may have to pay money to achieve these or give up certain conveniences in the name of your own privacy. Next, these protections are not going to be retroactive. If your information is already out there, then that's the end of it. Unfortunately, some of those records are out there forever and they will remain accessible even after you try and have it removed. There's no way to bury it sometimes. Real estate is a good way of thinking about it. It's a public record showing who has owned this property. If you put your name on that property, well, there we are. It's in there forever until you get it out by selling it. But even then, people will know that you own that property. Why? Title companies have to be able to trace back who has owned it to ensure that there are no other claims on that property. Finally, mistakes can and will happen. Some of the things you will do could be unwound by an unwitting person accidentally filing something that exposes your information. Be ready and know that this is a realistic thing that could happen. So, you can take steps to limit your exposure, but there's no way you're ever going to guarantee full privacy, especially when we're dealing with real estate. If you need guidance on structuring this, make sure you don't listen to some talking head, but get your own advisor to advise you on exactly what you can and should be doing. If you've got questions, we can give you general answers in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights on estate planning, asset protection, and privacy strategies.